Hey guys! I have learnt a new trick, which is putting my face on PowerPoints. I'm pretty excited by it. I think you might be seeing a bit of this in the future. It's going to really help me sort of deliver learning that's more similar to what we would have done at school. So that's exciting. Watch this space. Right, Miss Lister, get on with your work. Right, classifying plants. Classifying is a long word and it just means sorting, but kind of more scientific. A classification is a group that you would put things into. So I would classify myself as a teacher, or as a woman, or as a Yorkshire woman, or as a Yorkshire teacher woman. These are all different categories that I could put myself into, different classifications I could give myself. Hopefully that helps you understand what the word classifying means. It just means to put something into a category. We're going to look at 5 groups that plants can go into in this PowerPoint. First one is mosses. Characteristics. That means things that mosses have in common, things that mosses share. They live in damp places. They have thin leaves that lose water easily. That means when you touch them, they're quite often wet. I often sort of associate them with being like wet. They've not got proper roots or stems. They often grow not down into the mud, but onto stone or onto trees because they don't really have roots. And they make tiny spores instead of seeds. And these spores are carried by the wind. Now, a spore is scientifically different to a seed, but for our purposes, it's worth bearing in mind that it's similar to a seed. It does the same job, like a very small seed. Here's some pictures of some mosses. I think they're gorgeous. I really like the smell of moss. This makes me think of being in like a deep woodland and that wonderful smell that you get under your boots. Brilliant stuff. Next category, ferns. Characteristics of ferns: that they have strong stems, roots and leaves. You'll notice if you've ever tried to pull one up, they're really strong. Their leaves have a waxy cuticle, which means waxy really, layer to reduce water loss. And they have tubes called xylem inside the plant to transport water and give the plant support. Remember when we learned about water moving up through the plant? It moves up through xylem. That's the word for the part of the plant that the water travels through. And it, just like the mosses, it releases spores. So this doesn't have seeds. Again, it has spores. Let's look at some pictures. There you go. I really like ferns because they were one of the plants that evolved first. You got ferns at the same time as the dinosaurs. So this is the sort of plants that dinosaurs would have eaten, which I think is really exciting. And I love the way that they uncurl. If you look at this all curled up with all of those spirals, I love that. And these spirals that you get on the fern are the Fibonacci spiral that you've learnt about in some of your maths work this week if you've been looking at the Spicy Pack. Just a little interesting thing to remember. They don't have flowers. That's another thing to know about ferns. Conifers. Conifers are normally a type of tree, and they are sort of Christmas tree shaped trees, like this. It would help if I could draw in green. I probably can if I could work it out. They're that sort of tree. It says many are evergreen, keeping their leaves throughout the year. The leaves are needle shaped to reduce water loss. Again, it sounds like it's describing a Christmas tree. This is the sort of tree we're talking about. They also contain xylem for transporting water and giving support so they can suck up water through their stems. And they don't have flowers. Instead, they make cones, like a pine cone. So you can picture a pine cone. Let's look at. Here we go. Just like I was saying, it's those Christmas tree types of trees, and they've got the pine cones on them. And they might be slightly different shapes. You get short, fat ones, you get long, thin ones. But these are what tells you that tree is a conifer. Sometimes called evergreen, but normally a conifer. We've also got grasses. You know what grasses are. You know what that is. It's grass. But it comes in lots of different kinds. It's got hollow stems with swollen joints called nodes. So sometimes they look a bit like this. Sometimes you might see a bend in the grass and there's like a lump on it, like that. That's the node. Stems rarely branch above the ground. So normally what's growing out of the ground is like one bit, as that's what it's telling you. The leaves grow from stems with the lower part of the leaf protecting young shoots, and the leaves are long and narrow with parallel sides, like grass, because it's grass. Let's look at some pictures. Guess what we're going to see? Grass! All sorts of interesting things here. We've got grass as you know it, but also a lot of the food that we eat comes from grasses. This is, I think it's wheat, or it might be barley. I think it's wheat, and that's what we use to make the bread that we eat. This one is really interesting as well. Do you know what this is? This is bamboo, which is the world's biggest grass. And it's so interesting to know that this bamboo is related to the sort of grass that would get on leaf links. Moving on, flowering plants. Again, I think you know a little bit about this one already. This is plants with flowers. And the characteristics are that the flowers contain the reproductive organs, those are all of the parts that you labelled when you were doing the labelling plants activities. The pollen, which is the male sex cell, is carried on the wind or by insects. Remember you learned about pollinators and bees? They're carrying that pollen which helps the plant to reproduce. Flowers make seeds, not spores this time, seeds, after they've been fertilised, and these grow into new plants. That's how flowers reproduce. So flowering plants are very good at colonising land. That means that they're good at taking over spaces. So they're good at growing places where they weren't before. They can live in hot and dry places where there's not much water. Let's have some example pictures. All sorts of interesting ones. You might recognise this diagram. I know lots of you have got similar ones in your book. Here's one being pollinised by a bee. And this is interesting, isn't it? This is a big old tree. But if you look at trees closely, particularly at this time of year, you'll often see them blossoming. If you go out on your walks, you'll see lots of trees in blossom at this time of year, because trees are flowering plants as well, apart from those coniferous trees that we looked at earlier that have cones instead of flowers. And this is more what you might expect to see, is an orchid plant with some really beautiful flowers. And these are often gorgeous. You can go out and you can take pictures and you can show me all of your pictures of flowering plants, because there's lots flowering at the moment. It's the right time of year for it. Now potatoes as well are flowering plants. So when they grow some flowers, I'm sure Miss Martini and Angela will let us know. So you've now learnt about the 5 main categories of plants. You can always go back and look if you need to. Can you find some examples of each of these in your garden or when you're on a walk? A lot of them are easier to find than you may think. Now, I'd certainly agree with that, because anything you see with a pine cone, that's a conifer. Anything you see with a flower, that's a flowering plant. You'll see moss, look on stones. It's a really good place to start looking for moss. What else is on there? Ferns. Ferns tend to grow sort of in the wayside. So I've done flowers, conifer, moss, ferns. The last one, I can't remember what the last one was. Mosses, ferns, coniferous trees, so those are the ones with pine cones, flowering plants, and grasses. Grr, grasses. If you can't find grass, I don't know what we've been playing at for this entire year. I'd love to see pictures. Let me know. See you soon, guys. Bye.